What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is February 7th, 2026, about 2:15 p.m. where I'm at right now. And we are continuing our 18th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 7 of Revolutionary Suicide, the autobiography of Huey P. Newton, a famous Louisianian who moved to California to form the Black Panther Party for self-defense. In our previous chapters, we talked about the formation of Huey as a person, then the formation of the party, and now the party is in full effect. We're gonna be continuing our reading today by finishing all of part 3 of this text, and there are 4 chapters remaining. We read previously Freedom, Bobby Seale, the founding of the BPP, and patrolling. Today we will be finishing chapters 18, Eldridge Cleaver, chapter 19, Denzel Dowell, Sacramento and the Panther Bill, which is chapter 20, and 21, Growing Pains, and that will be it. It's about 25 pages or so it's not gonna be that long. We might be on here for only an hour or so. Okay, and we're gonna be continuing with this, chapter 18. Sorry for anybody who was waiting yesterday for the live stream, because I was just hella busy. You know, I work outside of doing live stream. This is just a side gig. But shout out to everybody who's gonna join the live stream. Shout out to Zach Hunter, 8364. Shout out to Zach Hunter joining the conversation, and everybody else up in the live stream. Without further ado, let's get into Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. Those who assert this kind of independence are usually wedded to the doctrine of me first and are generally wrong on the question of the relationship between the individual and the party. Although in words they profess respect for the party, in practice they put themselves first and the party second. What are these people after? They are after fame and position and want to be in the limelight. It is their dishonesty that causes them to come to grief. This was written by Chairman Mao in his little red book. Going on to chapter 18, Eldridge Cleaver. One evening in early 1967, Bobby Seale called and asked me to go with him to a radio station in downtown Oakland. He arrived with Marvin Jackman, a black playwright who was in the process of becoming a Muslim. We had tried to recruit Jackman into the party, but his Muslim beliefs forbade him to have anything to do with weapons. He and another Muslim brother arrived with Bobby, driving the car of Beverly Axelrod, a lawyer active in civil rights cases in California. The purpose of the trip was to meet Eldridge Cleaver, an ex-convict of growing reputation, who would be interviewed that night. I had heard of Eldridge's speeches in the Bay Area since his release from prison in December, but we had never talked, and I had not yet read Soul on Ice. Okay, Soul on Ice came out before he joined the Black Panthers. Interesting, I didn't know that. All right. Shout out to Raza the Dude joining the live stream. Shout out to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, no shout out to Jeffrey Epstein. No. I just read that name and that sounded so wrong coming out of my mouth. Yeah, fuck Jeffrey Epstein. But the person behind the account, I guess, shout out to you. Thanks for joining the conversation. Let's continue here. So, I'm just going to start that sentence over. I had heard of Eldridge's Cleaver's speeches in the Bay Area since his release from prison in December, but we had never talked, and I had not yet read Soul on Ice, which was receiving great critical acclaim, or any of his other writings. I knew only that he was an ex-convict with plenty of time behind him. Because of Eldridge's past experiences and his deep involvement in the movement, I was particularly eager to meet him. No ex-convict could be all bad. While we drove to the radio station, we listened to Eldridge's discussion with the interviewer. I liked what he said about his early life and his work in the movement since his release. He was articulate, his insights were good, and he seemed to understand the needs of the community and what Black people had to do to liberate themselves. When we pulled up to the radio station, Eldridge was still on the air. I wish he explained, or maybe he will, but I wish he explained why Eldridge was famous before. Was he a part of another radical group that was making waves? I forgot. I read Soul on Ice 20 plus years ago, so I can't even remember what was in it other than the scandalous parts. If you know, you know. Continuing. Immediately after the interview, Eldridge and I fell into a long discussion. It was not much of a dialogue, actually. Eldridge hardly said a word. I tried to persuade him to join the party then and there by running down our 10-point program and convincing him that we had developed Malcolm's ideas and were carrying them out. I explained that Malcolm's program had been rather vague since he had not the opportunity to lay it out clearly before he was cut down. A lot of groups were springing up, claiming to bear his standard, but we were the only ones who had armed ourselves and were teaching self-defense to the community. This was Malcolm's program, and we were serious about establishing it. Eldridge only listened. Every once in a while, he would nod his head in agreement and say, "I know." But he did not ask any questions or comment one way or the other about the program. When I finished, he told me that he was obligated to Malcolm's widow, Sister Betty Shabazz, and that he had promised to work with her to carry out Malcolm's dream and make it a reality. Then he left. I was puzzled by this first meeting. Perhaps he had not understood anything I was saying, even though he seemed to by nods and phrases of agreement. I figured that if he really understood, he would have asked some questions or made a criticism or two. When a man is interested, he wants to know more. Eldridge had been as silent as a sphinx. After reading the chapter in Soul on Ice that deals with police administration from the local to the international level, I realized that Eldridge did not argue any of the points with me that night because he understood all too well and agreed totally. A few weeks later, we were together at a meeting in the office of the Paper Panthers in San Francisco. This was a group of cultural nationalists in San Francisco who called themselves the Black Panther Party of Northern California. They had a similar group in Los Angeles. I did not know when they started or what their goals were, but David Hilliard labeled them the Paper Panthers because their activity was confined to a steady production of printed matter. Unlike Bobby and me, they had not grown up on the block. They were more privileged. Their office was close to the office of an organization called the Black House that Eldridge and Marvin Jackman had started in San Francisco. This was just a large house in the Fillmore area where people lived upstairs and used the first floor, which had been converted into a meeting room for political and social activities. Leroy Jones, now Imamu Amiri Baraka, was teaching for a semester at San Francisco State, and he sometimes gave readings on Friday nights. Other poets also read, and there was plenty of discussion and intellectualizing. It was Oakland and Berkeley all over again. As far as I could see, Black House was exploiting Eldridge, who paid the rent and the huge telephone bills. No one else was doing very much, just lying around, becoming black. Going to the comments, shout out to Quick Z77 for joining the conversation. Shout out to everybody up in the comment section. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep it going. And shout outs to everybody who joined so far. If you give a comment, I'll give you a shout out. So continuing here in Huey P. Newton's book, Revolutionary Suicide. Early in February 1967, all these groups banded together to sponsor a program in San Francisco honoring Malcolm on the anniversary of his assassination. The guest of honor was to be Malcolm's widow, Sister Betty Shabazz. They wanted to arrange some security for her since there was fear that she too might be assassinated. Bobby and I attended a meeting to organize an escort, Bobby and I attended a meeting to organize an escort, and although we had a good deal of contempt for the Paper Panthers, we agreed to join them in providing security. Eldridge was at the meeting too, silent as usual. When details for the escort were worked out and the day arrived, we joined the others in San Francisco and headed for the airport to meet Sister Betty. Before leaving Oakland, I had told the comrades that we were not going to take any arrest on this trip. If anything happened, I said, we would fight right down to the last man, but we definitely would not give ourselves up to the police. We were going out there specifically to provide a bodyguard for Sister Betty. And unless they were willing to give up their lives, they ought not to come. We made this decision for two reasons. First, she was the widow of Brother Malcolm, our greatest leader and martyr, and the mother of his beautiful children. We would not allow anything to happen to her after the way the establishment had so treacherously assassinated her husband. Second, her cousin, Hakeem Jamal, had told me that when she visited Los Angeles, the police had run off Ron Karenga's group, which was providing an escort for her. They had left her standing alone in the middle of the street. My specific orders were that nobody was to be arrested, because to be arrested was to leave her and a violation of our main purpose. Shout out to Louis Z1K4V up in the comment section. Shout out to Blue Boy Z8R up in the comment section. Shout out to Big Bill Johnson up in the comment section as well. Okay, and what else? Shout out to Brayon V2P7Z up in the conversation as well. Shout out to everybody up in here, and we're going to continue moving forward. Let's continue. So we proceeded to the airport. When her plane arrived, we formed a circle around her and led her to the waiting cars. People were standing around, staring and wondering what was going on. The airport police were edgy and unhappy about our activity, but we knew what we were doing, and we knew the law. We were taking care of Malcolm's widow. From the airport, we took her to the office of Ramparts magazine in downtown San Francisco for a meeting with Eldridge, Kenny Freeman, Isaac Moore, and some others. While they talked, we remained in an outer office, keeping out the police who were lurking everywhere. When the group broke up, Sister Betty told us that she did not want any pictures taken by reporters. Therefore, as we left the building, we held up copies of Ramparts around her. Dozens of reporters were waiting outside, and about 30 policemen. We were ready. These were soldiers, boy. These boys back then were soldiers. A reporter named Chuck Banks from Channel 7 grabbed from my magazine, but I held on to it and told him to let my property go. I had my shotgun cradled in my right arm and the magazine in my left hand. When he could not wrench the magazine away, he pushed it against my chest. I dropped the magazine and hit him with the left hook. He went down. Just before I hit Banks, I told 4 brothers to get Sister Betty out of there because I was sure from the number of police in the building that something was cooking outside. We were determined not to pull a Karenga. Finally, she made it to the car and drove off. Then I turned my attention to the situation at hand, telling the police to arrest Banks for hitting me in the chest and also for destroying my property. The police had a predictable reply. If we arrest anybody, it will be you. That is when I told my men to spread out and hit the street, surrounding the police. At this moment, one of the Paper Panthers, Roy Ballard, came running into the street with his weapon and hollered something like, "Don't point that gun." I looked the head policeman in the eye and said, "If you start drawing, this will be a bloodbath." My shotgun was in a ready position, safety off, and a shell in the chamber. The police had no shotguns, only revolvers. Had they started something, we would have wiped them out. Oh my God. Oh my God. Think about that, man. The Panthers were ready. And remember, Huey at this time, Bobby Seale, all these guys, they were 22 years old, maybe even younger than that. Going to war with the police, ready to pull out shotguns on the police, man. That's what I'm telling y'all about, man. That's revolutionary action, the propaganda of the deed, even if that means revolutionary suicide. Very inspirational. This is a very dope book. If you have not read this book, you need to read this book right now. If you have not read this book, you need to pick it up. It is so ill. I'm going to jump into the comment section real quick. Shout out to OG Kicks up in here. Salute to you. Shout out to Sean Brasgala. Shout out to you as well. Shane Brasgala. Shout out to you. Shout out to Manson Family Matters. Shout out to you, Manson Family Matters. And shout out to Brain Gascala once again. The book is Huey P. Newton's autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide. Not a hard book to find. We've been reading the book on live stream for the past week. We're about to finish it. We're in the middle of it right now. We're on chapter 18, reading about Eldridge Cleaver and the Black Panthers on their first mission to protect Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X. Continuing here. So, this was the extent of the conversation with the police. Otherwise, the air was as quiet as death. I made my statement to the police. He saw my weapon and froze. When some of my comrades turned their backs to walk off, I told them not to give the police a chance for justifiable homicide. Like others of its kind, the scene is chiseled in my memory. I can still see every detail of the tense, brief confrontation. And then we backed away to our cars, guns still held ready, and drove off. We had kept our promise to Sister Betty. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love this. This is so dope. The Black Panthers were the real defenders of the Second Amendment. I don't support the Second Amendment. In fact, we need to abolish the Second Amendment. But if the Second Amendment does exist, if you ain't pointing that piece at the police, then fuck you. If you are not willing to point the piece at the police, then get the fuck out of my face. I don't want to hear any talk from people saying, oh, we want guns to protect us from a tyrannical government, when the government has been tyrannical to black people since the very beginning. If you ain't ready to point the piece at the police, get the fuck out my face. Don't talk to me about a Second Amendment. All power to the people. What a decadent, sick society America is. Let's continue here. We found out later about the Paper Panthers, seeing how bad it might be. Roy Ballard had fled inside. He gave his gun to a woman in the office and told her to put it in her briefcase. Then he hid, trembling. He did not even leave with us. The Paper Panthers were simply another front for RAM, R-A-M, Revolutionary Action Movement. Good for nothing but running a mimeograph machine and fat-mouthing. If Sister Betty had depended on them for security, she would have been stranded. A short time later, when the Malcolm Memorial Rally was over and Sister Betty had left town, we learned that the Paper Panthers had not carried loaded weapons that day, either at the airport or in front of the Ramparts magazine station. We had stood down the police alone. Those fellows did not even own any bullets. When I asked Ballard about this later, he admitted it. A few weeks after this, we went to San Francisco where the Paper Panthers were having a fish fry and issued an ultimatum. They could merge with us or change their name or be annihilated. When they said they would do none of these things, we waded in. I took one of them and hooked him in the jaw. It was a short battle, ending a few moments later when somebody fired a shot in the air and people scattered. After that, the Paper Panthers changed their name. Gangster. All right. Shout out to all the people in the comment section. Shout out to Manson Family Matters. Shout out to Snake Plissken. Interesting name. Okay. Shout out to, who else is up? Walking Tall 420 up in here. Okay. And shout out to Brian Brasgala as well. Let's continue reading Huey P. Newton's very radical, very inspirational book, Revolutionary Suicide. So, after the Ramparts confrontation, we returned to Black House and relaxed until it was time for the memorial rally that night at Hunters Point Community Center in the middle of San Francisco's low-income black community. We did not see Sister Betty again until then. Although she wanted to meet us, the Paper Panthers had stolen her away. They told her that we were all in the same party, and that night they escorted her to the rally. While we provided security, we were supposed to speak during the program, but Kenny Freeman of RAM, the master of ceremonies, froze us out. On the way from Black House to the memorial rally, Eldridge rode in the car with me, and while we drove, he asked to join the Black Panther Party. This surprised me. I had given up all hope that he would join because he had expressed no interest, and I never tried to recruit by keeping after people. Once they had heard the program, it is up to them. But Eldridge was a man who kept his peace. He had apparently made up his mind to join much earlier when we went to the Paper Panthers office to talk about escorting Betty Shabazz. My surprise quickly turned to pleasure. Go into the comments here. Shout out to Mork the Ort 69. And shout out to everybody else up in the comment section. Everybody who's throwing hearts as well. Continuing here. Eldridge had skills that Bobby and I lacked, skills that were needed for our program. He was an eloquent writer, and his past experiences would make him a strong comrade for the difficult days ahead. I had no reservations about him, although even then something struck me about our conversation that only recently has begun to make sense. He kept calling me Bobby and talking about how that Newton really blew. Eldridge is crazy, bro. Like, if you ever want to laugh, read Eldridge's Cleaver's like just life story. It's just hilarity from beginning to end. Eldridge was a wild dude. I had no reservations about Eldridge Cleaver, said Huey P. Newton, although even then something struck me about our conversation that only recently has begun to make sense. He kept calling me Bobby and talking about how that Newton fellow really blew. A short time before, I had been invited to speak on the mall at Provo Park in Berkeley, but had sent Alex Papillion in my place. Somehow, the newsman had mistaken Papillion for me when the announcer used my name in telling the people that I had sent him. To complicate matters further, Eldridge had mistaken Alex Papillion for Bobby Seale. Alex had a gun strapped to his side, and every time he made a strong point, he would pat his pistol. He became known as the Pistol-Patting Panther. I do not know how Eldridge was aware of this event. Perhaps he was there, but as far as he was concerned, the pistol packer was Newton. And so in the car, he kept saying, Newton sure did blow, talking about the fantastic speech. Okay. I was so amused by this, I let him go on, waiting to see how long it would take Eldridge to get us straight. Okay, I guess the slang in the 70s at this point had like changed. Sorry, this is still the 60s. The slang in the 60s was like to blow meant to like do well. Like, I guess you speak well. So Huey Newton sure can blow. I guess like, you know, like on a trumpet, I guess. Anyway, giving a shout out to everybody up in the chat once again. Okay, shout out to Wrestle Past News up in the comments section. And shout out once again to Manson Family Matters for keeping the conversation moving, okay? Let's keep it going right here. I think his desire to belong was a cumulative thing, built slowly at the meeting about Betty Shabazz at Provo Park in front of Ramparts. I see now that Eldridge was not dedicated to helping Black people, but was in search of a strong manhood symbol. This was a common misconception at the time, that the party was searching for badges of masculinity. In fact, the reverse is true. The party acted as it did because we were men. Many failed to perceive the difference. As for Eldridge, at that stage of his life, he was probing for his own manhood. The party's uniforms, the guns, the street action all added up to an image of strength. And so he left the Organization for Afro-American Unity and the Paper Panthers to join us in the late spring of 1967. It must be said, in all honesty, that Eldridge at the beginning made great contributions to the party. He is a fine writer, an effective speaker, and an intelligent and talented human being. We felt then that his contribution would be to write for and edit the Black Panther paper, which we began publishing in April 1967. Seale had thought up the paper, which immediately became an important vehicle for communicating the truth about the party and the community. But only 3 of us were working on it, which is a next to impossible task for a publication running at least 12 pages an issue and sometimes up to 20. Publishing first as a monthly, our goal was to have it on the street every 2 weeks and, if possible, once a week. Eldridge took a good part of the workload. If anybody out there knows how we can get our hands on the Black Panther papers that were published, you know, from 67 all the way up until the end of the Panthers, let me know. If there's a book out there, if there's a resource, you know what I'm saying? Any way to get our hands on the Black Panther papers, newspaper clippings or anything like that, let me know. This is the APB, all right? Giving a shout out to everybody up in the comment section. Shout out to Carrie Sims. Shout out to Music Junkie 4228. Shout out to Chocolate Flavored Water. That's a crazy name. And everybody else up in the comment section. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the conversation going. We got 3 more chapters to read of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. I soon noticed, however, that Eldridge was not around when the deadlines came. We used to have to shakabuku him into writing and editing. I think shakabuku is when they cock the shotgun. I didn't find that out. There's no footnote that I can click on to in the text to find out what shakabuku, but I'm assuming that means they cock the shotgun. Anyway, I soon noticed, however, that Eldridge was not around when the deadlines came. We used to have to cock the shotgun to him into writing and editing. Because he was a writer, I found his reluctance difficult to understand. He seemed to work with enthusiasm only after something sensational had taken place, a shooting, perhaps, or when he was either out of town or in jail. After Bobby Hutton was killed in April 1968 and Eldridge was sentenced to Vacaville, the paper appeared regularly every week. But once out of prison, he fell back into old, uncooperative ways. He was always somewhat withdrawn and worked best by himself, doing his own thing in one way or another, and the newspaper suffered. This kind of independence hurt the party. It was essential that everyone work together and pitch in, especially when we had a project going. For instance, I wanted Eldridge to talk to party members, particularly the newer and younger ones, about some of the topics he discussed with the Yippies, the Peace and Freedom Party, radical white youth political organizations, and on campuses. I had great respect for the insight and knowledge he had acquired through study and reading. But when I tried to persuade him to teach a class to the troops, he refused. He never taught one class or attempted to organize any programs. He was always off talking on radio and television and before all sorts of groups that seemed more glamorous and exciting to him. Eldridge misunderstood the white radical movement. He exploited their alienation and encouraged young whites to think of themselves as bad blacks, thus driving them ever further away from their own community. At the same time, he seduced young blacks into picturing themselves as bohemian expatriates from middle-class Babylon, as he poetically but mistakenly analogized super-industrial America. So we became temporarily alien to the black community, while the white radicals were plunged deeper into the peculiar identity crisis. Cleaver's genius for political and cultural schizophrenia infected us all, black and white, and the opportunity was missed for youths of both races to express and make concrete their authentic underlying solidarity and love. This still remains to be done. It sounds to me a little bit like Eldridge Cleaver had like a Kanye West sort of complex going on. He wanted to be like all over the news, all over the media, just saying outlandish stuff, telling white people that they're bad black people and that's their analysis of this society if they want to change it, right? They have to identify as black to change it, right? And there is a discussion to be had about race abolition or moving into a transracial identity. I could understand that, but I mean, Eldridge Cleaver, from what Huey P. Newton is saying, sounds like he lacked in Marxist analysis. He lacked in understanding that the class divisions among the people and the contradictions of our society that force the poor to get poorer and the rich to get richer has nothing to do with race. Race is a byproduct of the creation of the capitalist system that forces us all to pit ourselves against each other for the meager crumbs that we view as gains financially. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, going to the comment section, shout out to Michael Hunt, shout out to Manson Family Matters, and shout out to everybody up in the comment section as well. Shout out to Perk2204, okay, and everybody else showing love. Shout out to everybody else showing love in the comment section. Everybody will get a shout out if you leave a comment, okay? Continuing here. So relating, as Bobby and I did, to the lumpen proletariat of the black community, we were down on bohemians and white radicals. But when Eldridge joined, he soon took us to meet the Diggers in San Francisco at their store in the Haight-Ashbury. And once there, we had no idea why we had come. Eldridge had not explained anything. The store was incredibly disorganized. After fighting our way through piles of garbage, we managed to have a discussion with some of the diggers. It turned out they wanted us to develop a peace force for them, a kind of protective guard, because they were being harassed by some of the lowriders in the area. When this point came up, I tuned out. What right have these people to ask us for protection? I told them to form their own peace force. Shout out to Drew Bannard up in the chat. And shout out to Doug McLean up in the chat as well, okay? Eldridge hung out a lot in Haight-Ashbury and on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley. And although we avoided further involvement with the diggers, before long we were attracting hippies and yippies to the party. A lot of them were deep into drugs. Because Bobby and I had started out as black nationalists and were influenced by the Muslims and Malcolm X, we steered clear of the drug scene. Unlike Eldridge, neither of us identified with Haight-Ashbury or Telegraph Avenue, and especially not with drugs. By the way, for anybody out there, the Black Panthers admit that they started as black nationalists, but they were not a black nationalist political movement or party. They were a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist organization, okay? They did not see themselves as trying to form some type of black nation. That was not their goal, okay? Continuing here. I had sought out Eldridge because he was an ex-convict, thinking he could not be all bad, and if he had pulled time, but my trust and belief in him were mistaken. He dealt several serious blows to the party, not only by welcoming hippies, but also by failing to use his voice to push Black Panther programs or improve our paper or be involved with the poor of the community or create a political vehicle. He talked only empty rhetoric about dealing blows and triggering sensational actions. All in all, Eldridge lived in a fantasy world. As time passed, he drifted away from us and from the ideology and aims of the Black Panther Party. Colossal events were to take place, events that would threaten our very existence. And after each of these setbacks, Eldridge's real position became clearer and clearer, although for a long time I was reluctant to admit or even recognize the truth. Brothers are bound together by the revolutionary love we have for each other, a love forged through loyalty and trust. It is an element of the Black Panther Party that can never be destroyed. Yet eventually, Eldridge betrayed this love and commitment in ways I once never believed possible. So, if you don't know, Eldridge and Huey had a famous falling out. And I think from what Huey is saying here in the text, right? He imagined that when he recruited Eldridge Cleaver, that Eldridge was going to be able to talk to the black masses, the lumpen proletariat, you know what I mean? The street dudes, for lack of a better word, street niggas, you know what I mean? Because the Black Panther Party was going to the pool halls, they were going to where the drug dealers were, they were in the trap, and they were trying to get the trappers to become revolutionaries. So he goes to Eldridge Cleaver, a famous radical who's printed a famous book and is very radical in his politics, and he's been in prison, so they think they're gonna get a brother who's gonna be able to talk to the people like Young Jeezy. And instead they got Kanye West. You know what I mean? The crimes that Eldridge was doing, or his mentality on the world was, for lack of a better word, pretty white. It seemed like Eldridge loved white validation. He liked being around the type of white women that Dave Chappelle likes. Dirty white women who are hippies with dirty feet. It seems like that's what Eldridge was drawn to. And that's fine. I think there's a place in the party for all types of black folks, you know what I'm saying? And Eldridge's talents could have been used in a better way had he had also a clearer message and maybe not been crazy. I don't know. But let me give a shout out in the comment section real quick. Shout out to Manson Family Matters. Shout out to Emitter 9000. Shout out to Drew Bannard up in the comment section. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Craftsman. Sorry, I skipped this one. Shout out to Craftsman BR4MR. And shout out to Cosmo6514. Okay? And everybody else. Okay? Up in the comment section as well. Okay? Let's continue here. All right? Let's continue. Let's go to chapter 19 of Huey P. Newton's autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide. Chapter 19. It is not often that one encounters in any black ghetto in this country a family that has not experienced some immediate contact with the corrupt judicial system and a repressive prison apparatus. It is not only impossible for a black revolutionary to get justice in the courts, but black people in general have been the victims rather than the recipients of bourgeois justice. This was said by Angela Davis, If They Come in the Morning. Beautiful. All right, chapter 19 is titled Denzel Dowell. North Richmond is an all-black community of about 9,000 inhabitants on the northwest side of the city of Richmond. It came into being during World War II when this area was used to provide limited and temporary housing for blacks, like my father, who came from the South to work in the shipyards. Kaiser Industries, the main employers at the time, were responsible for the establishment of the community. They expected the people to go back south after they were no longer needed, but the South had little to offer and the people had other ideas. When they stayed, the establishment found ways to punish them. Most of North Richmond is gerrymandered out of the city proper and cut off from any assistance from the public agencies except the Contra Costa County agencies. Many of these are run by racists who do not want blacks there. As a consequence, many people live in poverty and hardship. Continuing here, shout out to Rand Cawthon 7702. Shout out to Rand Cawthon. Shout out to you Q505V. Okay, we are reading Revolutionary Suicide, the autobiography of Huey P. Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party. And yeah, shout out to everybody up in the comment section. Keep it going. I love it. I love it. I love it right now. Okay. On one side of the community is a large garbage dump filled with rats. On another, Standard Oil refineries pour out their waste and fumes on the community. Some days it is hard to draw a breath without choking and coughing. The industrial needs of the area are obviously more important than the human needs of the people. No more than 2 or 3 streets lead into North Richmond, and each of these has a number of railroad tracks crossing it. This makes it difficult for the people to get out when emergency situations arise. They have to sit in their cars waiting for the freight trains to pass by. This limited access to the community makes it possible for the police to seal off the area anytime they want, and they have used that power often. This is an example of what they call environmental racism. Basically, you have poor, working class, mostly brown and black people living in areas where industrial waste and fumes enter into their systems because they're priced out of areas where these factories or these refineries are. In my state, in my home state of Louisiana, we have this place called Cancer Alley, where there are more oil refineries than anywhere else in America. And in these oil refineries, mostly poor black people are forced to live because they can't afford to live in the other sides of town or in other cities where they are not exposed to these toxic fumes and gases and cancer-causing agents. This is an example of environmental racism, and I'll salute Huey for bringing this fact up in this book because it's definitely a major problem in America. Continuing here. About half the population is under 19 years of age, a fact that presents special problems in terms of education and youth programs. Since there is a great need for these functions, many youths graduate from high school just as illiterate as I was, headed for the social trash heap. Recently, in 1971, one of the new playgrounds built by the people could not be used by children because the rats that came from the dump and the creek terrorized them. Reports in the San Francisco Chronicle indicated clearly that city officials believed that people wanted the rats, and that is why they were there. North Richmond is no different from countless black communities in California and the rest of the United States. Cut off, ignored, and forgotten, the people are kept in a state of subjugation, especially by the police who treat the communities like colonies. Isn't that sick? Look how sick anti-black racism works. You deprive a community of having the opportunity to have good jobs and good housing and upward social mobility. So then when they're forced to live in filth and degradation, you say, well, I guess they want to live amongst rats. Think how sick that is. And this doesn't just apply to black people. They say the same thing about the Palestinian people, or here in Europe where I'm at, they say the same thing about the Romas, or as they call them, which I define as a slur, gypsies. They say this about people all across the world who are oppressed, dispossessed, and marginalized. You don't give them opportunity, and then when they have to live in the filth that you created, you say they want to live amongst rats. This is why we need to destroy white supremacy. This is why we need to destroy capitalism. Gonna continue here. Give a shout out to everybody up in the chat. Shout out to Drew Bannard. Shout out to Manson Family Matters. And everybody else, come on, keep the conversation going. Let's keep it going. Anyway. So the family of Denzel Dowell lives in North Richmond, and it was there on April 1st, 1967, that their son and brother was killed by officers of the Sheriff's Department of Contra Costa County. He was 22 years old. Another young black man murdered by the police in America, and let Denzel Dowell's name live on forever. Rest in peace, Denzel Dowell. No black man, innocent black man, unarmed black man, killed by the police shall ever be forgotten by us. They are our martyrs. They said that Denzel Dowell was running away from a stolen car that had been flagged down by the police. Because he was allegedly in the act of committing a felony, his death was ruled justifiable homicide. Shout out to Old Glory 4648 up in the chat. Shout out to TCB 826 up in the comment section as well. Let's continue here. We were introduced to the Dowell family after Denzel's death by Mark Comfort, a bright, strong man with a long history of organizing blacks in the Oakland area. The Dowells had asked us to come to their home because of dissatisfaction with the official treatment of Denzel's death. Like most black families, they recognized the treachery of the police, but they knew how little could be done about Denzel's death through established institutions. The whole Dowell family considered themselves Black Panthers. Visiting them one Sunday afternoon, we were touched to see the deep sorrow and sense of helplessness so common among blacks under these circumstances. I had seen it many times in my work, and we were to see it again and again as we become more deeply involved in the life of the people. Mrs. Dowell, a beautiful and noble black woman, told us about her son's life. She had spent much of her time and energy trying to survive in North Richmond, supporting her family and raising the children right. She had done her best with what she had, and she had done a good job. Yet nothing could be done about the schools and other institutions that blocked her children from reaching the goals they had been taught to aim for. She was terribly upset about Denzel's death and over the indifferent and contemptuous way the authorities treated it. She knew that her son had been murdered in cold blood. We began our investigation at the same time the police were carrying out theirs. While they tried to establish a cover for their treachery, we searched for the truth. Policemen were constantly coming to Mrs. Dowell's house and treating her like dirt. They would knock on the door, walk in, and search the premises anytime they wanted. I happened to be at the house one day when they came. When Mrs. Dowell answered the knock, a policeman pushed his way in, asking questions. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped in front of her, telling him either to produce a search warrant or leave. He stood for a minute, shocked, then ran out to his car and drove off. That's how you stand up to the police. Put that peace on the police. In 2026, we are putting the peace on the police. Yes. Shout out to Old Glory 4648. Shout out to Drew Bannard, Manson Family Matters, and everybody else up in the comment section. Shout out to everybody once again. All right, continuing. Huey P. Newton says in his book, Revolutionary Suicide, when we read the police report of the incident, we rejected it and continued our own investigation, always carrying our weapons in full view. Together with the Dowells, we visited the spot where the murder allegedly took place and checked every possible detail. From my study of police methods in college, I came up with a number of inconsistencies in the official report. For example, the police claimed that Denzel had jumped one fence and was about to jump another when he was shot. But Denzel had a hip injury from an automobile accident and could hardly have run, let alone jump fences. The lot he supposedly ran across was an automobile junkyard full of garbage and oil, yet no oil was found on his shoes. The police said that he bled to death after being shot, but no pool of blood was noted at the site or anywhere else. We also learned that Denzel's brother and friends had found him lying all alone. After shooting him, the police had made no effort to summon medical aid or to save his life. All this was particularly significant and disturbing in light of the fact that Denzel was known to the police. They had threatened to get him on a number of occasions. In the dark, far from witnesses, they carried out their murderous treachery. See, this is interesting. I didn't know that Huey P. Newton and the Black Panthers were out there doing investigative work on the murders. You know what I'm saying? Which is interesting because we think about the Black Panthers just doing the patrols, following the police cars with the shotguns and the law books in their hands. But going out to a scene of the crime and looking at it and matching it with the police report where the police just lie. All the police do is lie about how they can get away with murdering young black men. And the Panthers go out there and say, ain't no way this young black boy could climb a 20-foot high fence and die in a pool of blood, you know what I'm saying, without any sort of medical treatment being offered to him. You know what I'm saying? So very interesting. I didn't know the Panthers were out there doing that. Anyway, shout out to Dave Bannard, Drew Bannard up in the comment section, putting in work in the comment section. Shout out to Old Glory 4648. Shout out to Remy Jeremy up in the comment section. And shout out to Icy Truth as well. Shout out to Icy Truth as well up in the comment section. Let's continue here in Revolutionary Suicide, chapter 19. So the same thing happened to little Bobby Hutton, to Fred Hampton, and Mark Clark in Chicago, to the students in the Orangeburg and Jackson state massacres in the South. It has happened to many thousands of unknown blacks throughout the history of this country, poor and powerless victims whose families were too terrorized or weak to cry out against their oppressors. The police murder us outright and call it justifiable homicide. They always cook up a story, but simple investigation will expose their lies. That is why we must disarm and control the police in our communities if we want to survive. Go into the comment section here. I got some comments. By the way, if you want to join the live stream where the book is being displayed, there's another live stream running on my channel simultaneously, and I got a comment over here. I'm going to show some love to this person. All right. Most Envied says, good morning, Brother Simon. Them brothers were college educated. I want to give this brother a heart, man. Where's a heart? I want to give this brother a heart. I'm going to just say thank you. Thank you, Most Envied. I appreciate that. I appreciate you watching and showing support. All right. So we're going to continue here. All right. I need to take a quick water break. Okay. So this is why we must disarm and control the police in our communities if we want to survive. When our investigation disproved the official story, we indicted the police for the murder of Denzel Dowell and called a community meeting to discuss our findings. We held a rally on the corner of 3rd Street and Chelsea in North Richmond on a Sunday afternoon. Our troops with weapons at the ready were stationed on all 4 corners of the intersection. The community was a little timid but proud to see black men take a stance. In their interest, and when we arrived, everybody was very receptive. They asked a number of questions about the guns, if they were loaded, and if carrying them was legal. We explained our weapons policy and told them about their right to carry arms. Then a remarkable thing happened. One by one, many of the community members went home and got their guns and came to join us. Even one old sister of 70 years or so was out there with her shotgun. This is the only time I support the Second Amendment. The only time I support the Second Amendment. And even that is tongue-in-cheek. I have a lot of opinions about the Second Amendment, but shout out once again to everybody up in the comment section. Shout out to Omnar Mana. Shout out to Icy Truth. And of course, the usual suspects, Manson family and Drew Banner. Shout out to everybody as well. All right. When they learned of the meeting, the police were again afraid and uncertain. One policeman was sitting in his car in the corner when we arrived. They do that frequently in North Richmond. Just drive up to the corner of 3rd and Chelsea and sit there, intimidating the people. But when we arrived and took positions with our guns, followed by a crowd, he took off like a shot. Bobby spoke first, and I followed. We ran down everything known about the case and exposed the errors in the police version. The people were impressed that some of their own had come forward to confront the police with factual evidence. We called on the community to arm and defend themselves against the racist dogs, stressing that it was their rights and we were there to teach them, not only in theory, but also through practice. While we were talking, another policeman drove down to Chelsea Street. When he saw the people gathered, he kept coming. But at the first sight of our guns, he turned around in the middle of the street and sped away. The people cheered. Soon after, we had another meeting with the community to discuss the case and what could be done about it. Now that we had presented our findings, we wanted to move their consciousness to a higher level. This meeting was held indoors to permit close discussion. At least 2 attorneys were there, a white one from the poverty program and a black lawyer interested in the case. Neither of them took a strong stand. The poverty program lawyer agreed that Denzel's death was a case of murder, but said there was little he could do. Denzel Dowell was dead. He could not stick his neck out too far since he was hired with public funds to assist the community. And this is why revolutionaries also need our own lawyers. We need to support our own lawyers to fight the good fight in the case of law. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, continuing here. Shout out to Dan It9L and shout out to Vandioso 7706. Okay, and shout out to Drew Bannard. Okay. All right, let's continue here. They advised the family to go to Martinez, the county seat, and talk to Sheriff Younger, who was in charge of the police patrolling the community. This seemed a good idea, and after the meeting, we took our arms and escorted the family to the sheriff's office. When we arrived, the police had surrounded the building and blocked all the elevators. They told us we could not enter with weapons, but we knew we were not in violation of the law. We asked them to produce the law that forbade us to enter the building with weapons. They could not do it. Although they admitted there was no statute, they still would not give us permission to enter. So we went inside anyway and insisted on seeing Younger. Police and sheriff's office personnel crowded into the elevators and blocked the doors to the stairs. When we demanded they arrest us or stand aside, they refused, saying they would not arrest us because there was no violation, but they also were not going to permit us to go any farther with our weapons, just violating these young black men's constitutional right to carry weapons. If the white man can run around with weapons and murder everybody in the school, why can't black revolutionaries defending the people walk up in their public houses with weapons? Why? Why not? Why not? See, this is the thing. The Second Amendment ain't really about the right for everybody to carry arms. It's just for white men to be deputized to commit anti-black racist attacks to uphold this fascist, patriarchal, decadent American society. Facts. Facts. If every black man in America had a gun tomorrow, there would be no Second Amendment. Facts. Continuing here. So, this shows us, said Huey P. Newton, this shows again that when the oppressor cannot get his will through legal devices, he will act illegally. We were thoroughly outnumbered, and the family, already upset, still wanted to talk to Younger. The Dowells asked us to leave our weapons in the car and come in anyway, mistakenly thinking they would get somewhere by talking. Out of respect for the family, we left the weapons behind and escorted the family to the sheriff's office. Younger refused to suspend the policeman who had killed Denzel, nor would he discuss the department policy about shooting suspects. If we wanted change in our communities, he said, we ought to go to Sacramento and petition the legislature to change the law. He said that according to the law, even if Denzel was not armed, and he was not, no weapon was ever found, reasonable cause existed to believe that he was in the act of committing a felony. Therefore, the officer had a right to kill him. Despite the evidence we have found, the sheriff said, this was the law, and if we did not like it, only the legislature could help us. Think about how wicked America is, at this time at least, because I don't know if this statute still exists. If you're in the act of committing a felony, you could be killed. And remember, we're all innocent until proven guilty in the own Constitution. In the Constitution that the white man puts up in our face and says, this is the law of the land, this is the law of the land, Jesus Christ gave it the Constitution, all this shit. We are innocent until proven guilty. So even if you are committing a felony, like, I don't know, breaking into an unoccupied house, which is a felony, apparently in America, you deserve to be killed. You deserve to be killed if you are committing a felony. If they suspect you of committing a felony, but you are not committing a felony until you've been proven in a court of law to have committed a felony. America is backwards, America is fascistic, and all these people who are right-wingers, who uphold the Second Amendment and talk all day and night about the Constitution, don't actually believe it. They don't actually believe in a Constitution. They don't actually believe in the rule of law. They believe in the law for you, but none for them. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. After this interview, the family saw even more clearly that no established institution would deal justice in the death of their loved one. Denzel had been executed by a policeman, and the law said that this was legal if any reasonable policeman believed that a suspect was in the act of committing a felony. This is a very bitter reality. The policemen assigned to control us are not reasonable men. They are inhuman madmen who see the black community as a place of aberrant behavior and who therefore feel justified in killing us in the dark of night. No official investigation into the death of Denzel Dowell was ever held, despite a promise from the district attorney's office in Martinez. In the public records, Denzel is just another dead suspect, branded as guilty by a corrupt, uncaring police department and an indifferent legal system. The fact that his family mourned his loss or that his name was never cleared does not move them. It was the same old story. The Black Panther Party had done as much as it could in dealing with the authorities, but another avenue was open to us. We could go beyond Martinez and take our investigation of Denzel's case to the people. Bobby suggested that we put out a leaflet describing the rally and what the Black Panther Party was trying to do for the Dowell family. The boldly headlined leaflet dealt with all aspects of the murder. This was our first newspaper, and when we held it in our hands, it seemed we had taken down another barrier between the Black Panthers and the community. We had never even thought of putting out a newspaper before. Words on paper had always seemed futile, but the Dowell case prompted us to find a way to inform the community about the facts and mobilize them to action. Lacking access to radio, television, or any other mass media, we needed an alternative means of communication. No one would do it for us. The party had only 5 or 6 full-time regulars, but we relied on the community to help us out. Many people knew Denzel Dowell personally and willingly pitched in. Most of the labor for the first paper was contributed by a hippie underground mimeographing outfit in San Francisco. This was the time when underground newspapers were just beginning. If you took material to them, they would print it out for you on an electric stenciling machine. We bought supplies, paper, ink, and staples, and put the leaflet together. Then we took it to the community. We tried to pay paper boys to insert our paper into the Richmond Independent, the Oakland Tribune, and the San Francisco Chronicle before they delivered them. But when they saw what our sheet was about, they did it for nothing. Damn, that's how see, that's power to the people, man. All power to the people, for real. They tried to pay the paper boys to put the Black Panther newspaper into the mainstream newspapers. But when they saw, oh, these young niggas trill as fuck. These young niggas pointing pieces at the police. Oh, nah, bruh. I don't even want your money, bruh. I'll do it for free. All power to the people. For real, for real, for real. Anyway, after delivering their own papers, they went around and passed out ours. We circulated about 3,000 the first time, asking for a donation of 10 cents. This went into a fund for the funeral expenses of the Dowell family and also for the cost of printing the paper. If anyone did not have 10 cents, we gave him a paper anyway and asked him to read it. But most people gave. Power to the people. All power to the people. Besides, North Richmond, we distributed the paper in Parchester Village, a small black settlement about a mile north, and also in some of the black sections of South Richmond. We walked everywhere, passing out newspapers, taking them from a borrowed van that went alongside us mile after mile. Beautiful, beautiful. Revolutionary struggle that makes you want to cry. Makes you want to cry. Shout out to Drew Bannard and Manson Family Matters up in the chat. Shout out to King Tyler. Shout out to King Tyler 1. Shout out to Barney Bell 4153. Shout out to Fender Funk. Shout out to Omnar Mano. Shout out to Greats Carlini. Shout out to Maximus F. Fort 808. Shout out to Icy Truth. There's a lot of people up in the chat. Shout out to everybody up in the chat. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay? And yeah, shout out to everybody up in the chat as well. Okay? Shout out to everybody. I'm very happy. This is a very exciting chat. I love to see all the engagement that people are so happy to be listening to the words of Huey P. Newton in Black History Month. I'm so happy that people are out here supporting revolutionary literature. They're supporting, keeping alive the legacy of a great Louisianian. Yes, Huey P. Newton was from Louisiana, and we're always going to put that in people's faces, from Monroe, Louisiana. My hometown, for real. And we're also so happy that in Black History Month, so many people are out here when you could be doing anything else. You could be doing anything else on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and you are out here supporting great Black literature, revolutionary literature, and keeping our ancestors' legacy alive. I'm so happy for all of that. Continuing here, all right? Where were we? So we were an unusual sight in Richmond or any other place, dressed in our black leather jackets, wearing black berets and gloves, and carrying shotguns over our shoulders. Bobby always strapped a .45 pistol to his side. People would stop and call to us, asking what we were distributing. This was a good example of our form of armed propaganda. I say our form because it was not exactly the way it happened in Cuba. The Cuban people, impressed by the successes of Castro's guerrillas, left their homes to follow him. Thus, for Castro, guerrilla warfare was a good form of propaganda. Walking armed through Richmond was our propaganda. people showed respect for the party not only by wanting to read about Denzel Dowell, but also by wanting to learn more about us. This had always been our aim, to arouse interest in the case and in the party. Then we could go on to explain the necessity for armed self-defense, an idea that was not hard to put across since the people knew the problems and had been looking for solutions. The Denzel Dowell case was critical to the development of the Black Panther Party. It led to our first national exposure, and it also helped us launch our paper, which was a way of interpreting events to the community from a Black perspective. Our intercommunal news service and weekly paper, The Black Panther, have become central in the Black Panther survival programs. So in one sense, Denzel Dowell's death was not in vain. Every issue continues the struggle we began in his cause. In a way, the Black Panther newspaper is a living memorial to him. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That was a very dope chapter. I love chapter 19. Chapter 19 and chapter 16, if I remember, the founding of the party, are my favorites so far. But every chapter of this book, there's so much beautiful history. There's so much inspiration that I'm getting from this book. This book has me fired up. You know what I'm saying? I've read a lot of books on this channel in the Book to React series, but this is one of them ones. You know what I mean? This is one of them ones. I haven't felt like this since we read Yahya Sinwar's book, The Thorn and the Carnation. If you don't know who Yahya Sinwar is, he was the leader of Hamas. And he tells this, he writes a novel about what it's like to be a Palestinian child growing up under occupation from like the early 60s till now. You know what I'm saying? So if you didn't check that out, go check out the leader of Hamas's book that we read on this channel, Yahya Sinwar. We read his book from beginning to end, The Thorn and the Carnation. That book also is very fiery, very powerful. But this book as well is dope. Very dope. And I can relate to it more as a Black American from Louisiana, like Huey P. Newton. Yeah, I said it. Without further ado, we are continuing Revolutionary Suicide. We have 2 more chapters that we're reading today. We're reading chapter 20, Sacramento and the Panther Bill. And it starts like this. This is the only chapter that doesn't start with like a quotation from a book. Anyway, I think in this chapter, he's going to talk about the famous story of the Black Panthers marching into Sacramento's, which is the capital of California, marching into the Sacramento State House with their shotguns. You know what I'm saying? But let's find out. So Bobby and I took back on the, sorry. All right. Okay. Bobby and I look back on the early days of the Black Panthers with nostalgia. It was a time of discovery and enthusiasm. We had hit on something unique. By standing up to the police as equals, even holding them off, and yet remaining within the law, we had demonstrated Black pride to the community in a concrete way. Everywhere we went, we caused traffic jams. People constantly stopped us to say how much they respected our courage. The idea of armed self-defense as a community policy was still new and a little intimidating to them, but it also made them think. More important, it created a feeling of solidarity. When we saw how Black citizens reacted to our movement, we were greatly encouraged. Despite the ever-present danger of retaliation, the risks were more than worth it. At that time, however, our activities were confined to a small area, and we wanted Black people throughout the country to know the Oakland story. Shout out to MacBain86. Shout out to MacBain86 up in the comment section. Shout out to, once again, Drew Banner, the Manson family, holding it down, holding the fort down. And shout out to everybody else who's going to be leaving comments as well. Let's keep the conversation going. So, in April 1967, we were invited to appear on a radio talk show in Oakland, the kind where people phone in questions and make comments. Early in the program, we explained our 10-point program, why we were focusing on point 7, and why it was necessary for Black men to arm themselves. We also made it clear that we were within our constitutional rights. Hundreds of calls poured in. The lines were jammed. Some people agreed with us. Others disputed our points. We welcomed the discussion because criticism helped us to find weaknesses in our program and to sharpen our position. One of the callers was Donald Mulford, a conservative Republican state assemblyman from Piedmont, one of the wealthy white sections of Oakland. Mulford was so close to Oakland's power structure that his call could only mean he saw political profit in attacking the Black Panthers. He told us that he planned to introduce a bill into the state legislature to make it illegal for us to patrol with our weapons. It was a bill, he said, that would get the Black Panthers. Mulford's call was a logical response of the system. We knew how the system operated. If we used the laws in our own interest and against theirs, then the power structure would simply change the laws. Mulford was more than willing to be the agent of change. I wonder, he was a conservative Republican. For all the Black people out there who are Black MAGA, I know y'all like to say the party never switched, Black people should have stayed Republicans. We don't even have to go back to the party switch. Just think about everything the Republicans have done to Black folks since 1968. Let's just say 1968 up until 2026, where we are today. Just think about everything the Republicans have done in the last 50 years. In the last 50 years. We don't have to do anything like that. Shout out to William Bowman up in the comment section. Shout out to William Bowman. Shout out to I Am Broso. Interesting name. Anyway, a few days later, the paper carried a story about Mulford's Panther bill. In its particulars, it was what we had expected, a bill intended to suppress the people's constitutional right to bear arms. Until then, white men had owned and carried weapons with impunity. Groups like the Minutemen and the Rangers in Richmond were known to have arsenals, but nobody introduced bills against them. Mulford had been asked by the Oakland police to introduce this bill because some young Black toughs, as they called us, were walking around with guns. The bill was further evidence of this country's vicious double standard against Blacks. The usual pattern of white racism was gradually being put into effect. They would escalate the killing of Blacks, but this time the police would do the job that the KKK had done in the past. Shout out to I Am in Hell 111 up in the comment section, and everybody else up in the comment section as well. The Black Panthers have never viewed such paramilitary groups as the Ku Klux Klan or the Minutemen as particularly dangerous. The real danger comes from the highly organized establishment forces, the local police, the National Guard, and the United States military. They were the ones who devastated Watts and killed innocent people. In comparison to them, the paramilitary groups are insignificant. In fact, these groups are hardly organized at all. It is the uniformed men who are dangerous and who come into our communities every day to commit violence against us, knowing that the laws will protect them. Bobby Seale and I discussed the Mulford bill against his background. Sheriff Younger had suggested facetiously that the Dowell family attempt to get their case heard in the state capitol. The Dowell family only wanted some good to come out of all the grief inflicted on them. We knew that the Dowells would get no better consideration in Sacramento than they had received from Younger. The legislators would probably tell them to go to the governor, and the governor would point to Washington. Of course, the old rigmarole, spin them around, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Love the Azul. Shout out to Love the Azul up in the comment section. Thank you for joining today. And shout out to everybody else, okay, up in the comment section. Institutions work this way. A son is murdered by the police and nothing is done. The institutions send the victim's family on a merry-go-round, going from one agency to another until they wear out and give up. This is a very effective way to beat down poor and oppressed people who do not have the time to prosecute their cases. Time is money to poor people. To go to Sacramento means loss of a day's pay, often a loss of a job. If this is a democracy, obviously it is a bourgeois democracy, limited to the middle and upper classes. Let's read that again. If this is a democracy, obviously American democracy is a bourgeois democracy, limited to the middle and upper classes. Only they can afford to participate in it. Mic drop. We might cut the stream off right there. Facts. A bourgeois decadent democracy meant to serve the rich. All right? Guess who? Shout out to Guess Who up in the comment section. And shout out to everybody else up in the comment section as well. Continuing here. Huey P. Newton says in Revolutionary Suicide, knowing all this, we nonetheless made plans to go to Sacramento. That we would not change any laws was irrelevant, and all of us, Black Panthers and Dowells, realized that from the start. Since we were resigned to a runaround in Sacramento, we decided to raise the encounter to a higher level in the hope of warning people about the dangers in the Mulford Bill and the ideas behind it. A national outcry would help the Dowell family by showing them that some good had come from their tragedy. Also, it might mobilize our community even more. Dozens of reporters and photographers haunt the Capitol waiting for a story. This made it the perfect forum for our proclamation. If the legislators got the message too, well and good, but our primary purpose was to deliver it to the people. Actually, several groups went. 4 or 5 members of the Dowell family, a group of brothers from East Oakland, recruited by Mark Comfort and the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers and Comfort's cadre were armed. The party agreed that I ought not to make the trip for 2 reasons. First, I was on probation from the Odell Lee case, and they did not want to jeopardize my freedom. Second, if any arrests were made in Sacramento, someone should be available to raise bail money and do whatever else was necessary. Man, Huey P. is putting me to shame. He's doing this while being out on bail or out on probation. He got papers on him. Man them had the piss test. But he's still pointing the shotgun at the police. He's still pointing the shotgun at the police while on probation. Meanwhile, we're inside. We're inside. Our ancestors put us to shame. Our ancestors put us to shame for real. Because they didn't give a fuck. They didn't give a fuck. They were about that action. They were about that action. Huey P. was on probation, on papers, pointing the piece at the police. My God. Anyway. So before they left, I prepared executive mandate number 1, which was to be our message to the Black communities. It read like this. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general, and Black people in particular, to take careful note of the racist California legislature now considering legislation aimed at keeping Black people disarmed and powerless, while racist police agencies throughout the country intensify the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of Black people. At the same time that the American government is waging a racist war of genocide in Vietnam, the concentration camps in which Japanese Americans were interned during World War II are being renovated and expanded. Since America has historically reserved its most barbaric treatment for non-white people, we are forced to conclude that these concentration camps are being prepared for Black people who are determined to gain their freedom by any means necessary. The enslavement of Black people at the very founding of the country, the genocide practiced on the American Indians, and the confinement of the survivors on reservations, the savage lynching of thousands of Black men and women, the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and now the cowardly massacre in Vietnam, all testify to the fact that toward people of color, the racist power structure of America has but one policy: repression, genocide, terror, and the big stick. America's the great Satan. That's my aside. I just wanted to add that in there. Black people have begged, prayed, petitioned, and demonstrated, among other things, to get the racist power structure of America to right the wrongs which have historically been perpetrated against Black people. All of these efforts have been answered by more repression, deceit, and hypocrisy. As the aggression of the racist American government escalates in Vietnam, the police agencies of America escalate the repression of Black people throughout the ghettos of America. Vicious police dogs, cattle prods, and increased patrols have become familiar sights to Black communities. City Hall turns a deaf ear to the pleas of Black people for relief from this increasing terror. Even though Huey P. is writing all of this, even though Huey P. Newton is writing all of this in 1968, does this not sound like 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026? Has America not continued to be an evil, oppressive government to its people, particularly Black people? Has not the great Satan become even more greater? And does its death and destruction become even more warranted with every passing day? Continuing here, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense believes that the time has come for Black people to arm themselves against the terror before it is too late. The pending Mulford Act brings the hour of doom one step closer, one step nearer. A people who have suffered so much for so long at the hands of a racist society must draw the line somewhere. We believe that the Black communities of America must rise up as one man to halt the progression of a trend that leads inevitably to their total destruction. I repeat, we believe that the Black communities of America must rise up as one man to halt the progression of a trend that leads inevitably to their total destruction. While I gave Bobby his instructions, I impressed upon him that our main purpose was to deliver the message to the people. If he was fired upon, he should return the fire. If a gun was drawn on him, and it was his interpretation that the gun was drawn in anger, he was to use whatever means necessary to defend himself. His instructions were not to fire or take the offensive unless in imminent danger. If they attempted to arrest him, he was to take the arrest as long as he had delivered the message. The main thing was to deliver the message. In stressing these points, I told him that if he was invited in or allowed inside the legislature, he was to read the message inside. But if it was against the rules to enter the legislature, or if measures were taken to block him, then he was not to enter, but to read the message from the Capitol steps. So once again, propaganda. It's all about propaganda. It's all about getting the message out there. Propaganda of the deed and also the word. Go into the comment section. Crick Q4S is in the comments. Shout out to Crick Q4S. Shout out to Drew Bannard. Shout out to Guess Who. And Manson Family Matters right here. All right, continuing here. In the comment section, continuing with the text. The name of the book is Revolutionary Suicide. Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. And what you're listening to right now is the Booked React series on my channel, where I read interesting books that I find interesting on my channel, cover to cover, with the people. This is the point. We're bringing literature, we're bringing literacy, we're bringing revolutionary politics back to the people by going to the root. We're reading books again. I know this is something the right-wingers don't do. I know this is something the Nazis don't do, but this is what we do on our channel. We read text, and we also get out in the streets with the people. All right? Shout out to Kevin Vastola, 933 up in the chat. Shout out to Bishop Digest up in the chat, and shout out to Crick for Q4S up in the chat as well. All right, continuing here. All right. The Black Panther troops rolled out for Sacramento early on the morning of May 2nd. As soon as they left, I went to my mother's house. I had promised to mow her lawn that day. Huey P. Newton is planning the revolution, but he's like, Mama, I'm sorry. I got to mow your lawn. I forgot. I know I promised you, Mama. Mama. This is funny, bro. That's funny as hell. Hold on, wait. The Black Panther troops rolled out for Sacramento early on the morning of May 2nd. As soon as they left, I went to my mother's house. I had promised to mow her lawn that day. That's funny as hell. That's funny. But I took a portable radio along and put it on the front steps to listen for news. In the house, I turned the television set on and asked my mother to keep an eye on it. Then I started mowing the lawn. That's funny. That's just funny as hell. All right. About noon, a bulletin interrupted the radio program. It told of brothers at the Capitol with weapons. My mother called out to me that all channels were showing the event. I ran into the house, and there was Bobby reading the mandate. The message was definitely going out. Bobby read it twice, but the press and the people assembled were so amazed at the Black Panthers' presence, and particularly the weapons, that few people appeared to hear the important message. They were concentrating on the weapons. We had hoped that after the weapons gained their attention, they would listen to the message. Very interesting. So the Panthers are on the Capitol steps with their shotguns, and Bobby Seale is reading the message that America is a wicked, evil, decadent society, and something must change or else we will all be destroyed. Bobby is reading this, but the press, mostly the white press, is just saying, damn, look at them niggas' guns. Damn, them niggas got some big-ass guns. Whatever. Anyway, Icy Truth is in the comment section. Shout out to Icy Truth. Shout out to Bishop Digest. Okay. And Bishop is working on his master's. Shout out to Bishop Digest working on his master's. I'm getting my second bachelor's right now. I'm in the sociology program out here in Budapest, Hungary, getting my second degree. And hopefully I'll get my PhD one day. But more importantly, I want to dedicate my life to the revolution. So shout out to Bishop Digest getting his education and everybody else out there who values education, who's spending their time, money, and effort getting their education, okay? Autistic Cool, my brother Kamal. Kamal, finally, the commander from the Defense of Crackerdom League is in here. Kamal says, iconic photo on the steps of the Sacramento State House. Yes, shout out to Kamal up in the chat. Kamal, you are the Defense from Crackerdom League. We got a lot of crazy ass crackers up in here. Kamal, I'm giving you permission. I'm giving you permission to clear house. To clear house, Kamal. Kamal, you're the first one up in here. I need you to clear house. We got too many crazy ass crackers up in here. I need you to get on your business, man. I need you to get on your business. All right? Yes, right wingers can't read. Right wingers cannot read. Right wingers cannot read. That is a fact. Shout out to Drew Bannard. We got so many quotes up in here. So many quotes. Kamal says, front and center. Handle your business, baby. Handle your business. Anyway, yeah, continuing here. So later, says Huey P. Newton, another bulletin came on saying the brothers had been arrested. Bobby for carrying a concealed weapon, although he was wearing his gun openly on his hip. Some of the other brothers were charged with failing to remove the rounds from the chambers of their guns when they put the weapons back in the car. I got on the phone and finally made contact with one of the Black Panther women who had gone along. She told me what had happened, and I began to initiate the next phase of our plan, raising bail money. That night, I went to a local radio station where a talk show was on. People calling in to discuss the incident had been told that I was in jail, and I decided the best way to deal with that was by confrontation. So I went in there, as Malcolm would have done, and asked for equal airtime. One of the startled program directors looked at me and said, "Well, you're sort of in jail." I said, "Yes, I am in jail, but let me have equal time anyway." On the air, I explained the Sacramento ploy. My explanation was not very effective, I felt, because people who call these shows are always more interested in themselves than in issues, and you have to fight through that first. But I was able to make an appeal for money. We were faced with $50,000 bail in Sacramento, and within 24 hours, I had raised $5,000 needed to get the troops back on the streets. Our plan had worked exactly as we hoped. Bravo, 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 bravo. Shout out to the Panthers as well. Because listen, man, the propaganda of the deed does not mean that you're always successful. The revolution wasn't going to happen that day on the Sacramento courthouse. The brothers weren't just going to light up the legislature and then, oh, now the revolution has happened. No. Brothers got to get arrested. Then you got to go on the radio. You got to ask the people, come support the Panthers. We're standing up for the people. We're outside with it, for real, for real. And the people donate, they get involved, and now you have a movement. They're fostering a movement, and I love it. I love it. Continuing here. We're almost done with reading today. We just have a few more pages to go. We have one more chapter to read. So looking back, says Huey P. Newton, I think our tactic at Sacramento was correct at that time, but it was also a mistake in a way. It was the first time in our brief existence that an armed group of Black Panthers had been arrested, and it was a turning point in police perceptions. We took the arrest because we had a higher purpose. But it was not until then that the police started attempting to disarm the party. They leveled shotguns on the brothers, handcuffed them, and generally pushed them around. I had given orders not to fire unless fired upon. Maybe the order should have been to fire on everybody in there. What? Listen to what Huey says. They leveled shotguns on the brothers, handcuffed them, and generally pushed them around. I had given orders not to fire unless fired upon. Huey told the Black Panthers, don't shoot nobody in the Capitol unless they shoot at you. But then Huey says this, maybe the order should have been to fire on everybody in there. Then they would have realized we were serious. Damn. That's revolutionary, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's when you don't give a fuck. That's when you don't give a fuck, and that's how you know it's real. Because Huey says, maybe I made a mistake by telling my Black Panther brothers at the state capitol, don't fire on anybody. We come in peace. We got our peace, but we come in peace. Huey saying, maybe I should have told my boys to murder everybody in the Capitol, because we could have done it. You know what I'm saying? That's a flex. That's a flex. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. Huey says, but our purpose was not to kill. It was to inform, to let the nation know where the party stood. The police, however, took it to mean that the party was only a front with weapons, that we would not defend ourselves. This attitude caused a number of problems for us, and it took some time to restore caution to the police after Sacramento. Now everything is as it used to be because they know they will have a fight on their hands if they try to attack us. Sacramento was certainly a success. However, in attracting national attention, even those who did not hear the complete message saw the arms, and this conveyed enough to Black people. The Bay Area became more aware of the party, and soon we have more members than we could handle. From all across the country, calls came to us about establishing chapters and branches. We could hardly keep track of the requests. In a matter of months, we went from a small Bay Area group to a national organization, and we began moving to implement our 10-point program. All right? Very good. Very good. Very powerful. I love that chapter. I never knew Huey's side of the story of the famous Black Panthers at Sacramento event. So shout out to Huey for explaining that. We have one more chapter to read. We're only reading one more chapter. These are very short chapters in this very good book, Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. I suggest everybody pick it up, go buy it, download it, whatever you want to do. Pick up the book and read it for yourself if you don't like my reading style. And one more thing, my guy Kamal is in the chat whooping ass. My lieutenant for the Defense from Crackerdom League, Kamal, is in there whooping ass. And all you got to do to have your comments understood and heard is just not be racist. Don't be racist. Don't be retarded. Don't be a dumbass. Have something to say with intelligence. Because you can disagree with me. I'm not some asshole who doesn't like people that disagree with me. Unless they're racist or white supremacists. You can disagree with Huey P. or my politics or anybody's politics, but don't come in here calling Black people the N-word, calling us monkeys, calling us all sorts of things, and disparaging our ancestors. Do not say a negative word about Huey P. Newton, because he ain't say a negative word about you. If you read the book, you would know Huey P. Newton didn't like to curse. Huey P. didn't call people motherfuckers and jive turkeys and assholes and shit like that. If you actually read the book, but right-wingers don't read, of course, that's why we have to bring them the message like this. You know what I'm saying? But listen, Kamal is handing out ass whoopings. If you don't want your ass whooped, just be respectful. Be respectful to Black people, because we're not in here calling y'all crackers, ofays, and child pedophiles. Oh, wait, sorry, we did. Okay, all right. Shout out to Captain Fancy Cat up in the chat. Shout out to Icy Truth. Shout out to Crick, Q4S, and everybody up in the comment section. All right, and shout out to Kamal as well. One more chapter. We're reading our last chapter here. All right, and it's Lil Toilet. It's Lil Toilet says there's only one race, the human race. Absolutely, I agree with you. It's Lil Toilet. It's Lil Toilet. It's crazy. I agree with you. There's only one race, the human race. But the capitalists and the white supremacists created a system of hierarchy based on race, which we are trying to abolish. And the only way to abolish it is by getting rid of capitalism and white supremacy. And we will attack them. We cannot just say that we're going to, not see color or pretend race is not a real concept that has real effects on people's lives. So yes, there is one human race, but the people who created this system, the white supremacists, told us that we're different races, and we're here to abolish that. Shout out to Carter Terrian 4746, okay? And shout out to Kareth J, all right? And Kareth J is a very intellectual man. Kareth J says, I would recommend A Taste of Power by Elaine Brown as the next book to complement Newton. Yes, Kareth J, I was thinking about that today, actually in the shower. I was like, what book should we read next? And I want to continue maybe a Panther series. Maybe we read all the books from former Panthers, like Elaine Brown, like Bobby Seale. I read Angela Davis's book in private, you know what I'm saying? And of course, Asada's book as well. But yeah, if you have any other books that you think will be good in the Black Panther book reading series, let me know. And yeah, shout out to Anthony up in the chat as well. And Kamal continue to hand out ass whoopings. All right, final chapter we're reading today, chapter 21. Of Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. I have made up my mind. Wherever I go, I shall go as a man and not as a slave. I shall always be courteous and mild in deportment towards all with whom I come in contact, at the same time firmly and constantly endeavoring to assert my equal right as a man and a brother. Said Frederick Douglass. Said by Frederick Douglass in My Bondage and My Freedom. Final chapter 21, Growing Pains. The Mulford Bill passed the California legislature in July 1967 by a huge majority. As soon as the law was changed, making it illegal to carry loaded weapons, we stopped the armed patrols. The police understood this to mean that we were ready to submit, and they stepped up their campaign of harassment. Only a month after the Sacramento trip, we were subjected to another stupid and childish incident. One night in June, a bail fund party was held in Richmond. As soon as we arrived, the police miraculously appeared, but remained outside in their parked cars. This was an ominous sign. We decided to ignore them, however, and remained inside all evening having a fine party. When the party began breaking up about 2 a.m., we decided to stay a while longer to avoid trouble, since we thought the police might leave when the place emptied out a little. But it turned out they wanted us, the Black Panthers. It became a waiting game. The police cut their motors and lights and sat in the darkness. We stayed inside and went right on enjoying ourselves. Finally, all of us had to leave. About 5 a.m., we came out and got into our cars. One of the Black Panther members, John Sloan, made a U-turn in the middle of the block and drove off, away from the police. To my knowledge, such a turn in a residential area is perfectly legal. But the police pursued him, stopped him about a block away from the house, and began writing out a ticket. We stopped our cars a reasonable distance from this exchange and got out to watch. Sloan refused to sign for the ticket. He had been drinking at the party, and this may have affected his behavior. But at any rate, he would not sign where he was supposed to. When an argument broke out, I walked over to his car and said, "Sign the ticket. If there's any problem, we'll take it up in court, but sign the ticket." Sloan went right on arguing, and soon 7 or 8 more policemen arrived. Among them was a young recruit, no more than 22 or 23. Who went up to all of us standing on the sidewalk and began stepping heavily on one foot after another. When he got to me, I pulled my foot back. It was no time for a fight. After he passed, I ignored him and tried to get Sloan to calm down and sign the ticket. Sloan finally came around and was about to sign when the recruit stepped on the feet of a brother who promptly helped him off in a vigorous fashion. That was all the police needed. They charged the brother and began to beat him with their clubs. I ran up to them saying, "This isn't necessary. It's not necessary." None of us were armed, or the situation would have been different. But cowardly as ever, they were unrestrainedly attacking an unarmed man, overpowering him. Horrific. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. The police are outside antagonizing people, just having a good time. Because of their political beliefs. I thought in America, you had the right to believe what you want to believe, to follow any sort of political ideology and express yourself how you want to express yourself, even if that means following the Second Amendment and brandishing your weapons. But apparently the Black Panthers were so antagonistic that the police got to step on shoes and cause them brothers to retaliate to then get the results that they want. Anyway, I'm going to continue here. When I saw how brutally they were beating the brother, I went over to one of the policemen and put my hand on his arm to restrain him. This man was big and powerfully built. He spun around and charged me, backing me against the car in a chokehold so tight I could not move. The other brothers ran to my assistance. The policeman had reached for his gun because he was afraid the people would storm him. But I told them not to do anything, and I took the arrest, along with John Sloan and the brother who had shoved the policeman off his foot. All the way to the station, Sloan and the other brother angrily cursed the policeman. I tried to calm them down. We were handcuffed and there was no point in further struggle, but they kept right on protesting and cursing. And when we got to the station, the police began working them over. Their arms were still restrained. Since I said nothing, I got off lightly. The police provoked me, but I refused to respond. I just kept telling the other guys to shut up, but they would not, so they got a real beating. The big guy who had charged me was right in the middle of it, giving as many blows as he could, really enjoying the work. Look at this, the police beating up unarmed men. And y'all tell us to respect the police? Man, fuck the police. Fuck the police. Fuck every single police officer in America. Facts. I don't give a fuck. There's no such thing as a good policeman. Fuck all police, man. Fuck all police because they uphold a patriarchal, racist, capitalistic, exploitative system. Fuck the police. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just hearing this story of police brutality triggers me because I've been a victim of police brutality. I've been a victim of police brutality, and this shit bothers me, bruh. I still think about it. I still think about it, man. Anyway, I'm gonna continue here. All right. Shout out to Brandon Skit. Shout out to Starla Yes Peterson, and shout out to Kenneth J. All right. Kareth J says, have you ever seen the movie Z by Costa Gravas? No, I haven't seen Z, but that's a good film. We might check it out in the movie reviews. We haven't done a movie review in a while. All right. All right. Who else? Shout out to Adam Freynick up in the chat as well. All right. And shout out to Theft Prevention Same. All right. Anyway, continuing here. Since I said nothing, I got off lightly. The police provoked me, but I refused to respond. I just kept telling the other guys to shut up, and they would not, and so they got a real beating. The big guy who had charged me was right in the middle of it, giving as many blows as he could, really enjoying his work. After the brothers were subdued, he mopped his brow, straightened up his clothes, and told the others, I have to go now because I promised to take my wife and kids to church at 9. What a sick cracker. What a sick cracker. What a sick cracker. Beat up an unarmed, restrained man and then tell the other au fait police officers, I gotta take my wife and kids to church. Sick. Just fucking sick. Fuck all police. Fuck all police officers. Continuing here. When we began to receive requests for assistance in starting new branches of the party, we realized our need for more than courageous troops. We lacked an administrative body that could handle these requests and supervise a large-scale organization. The brothers on the block had none of the bourgeois skills needed for this. Yet these skills were necessary, even though we did not want bourgeois values. So we looked for ways to solve our administrative problems while continuing our work with the street brothers. I had to respect the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee for having some of the most disciplined organizers in the country. When we had first talked of forming a party, Bobby and I read about their work in the South, registering people to vote in organizing cooperatives and the like. We felt they could do a good job of administering the party because they were all committed people and highly skilled. Their leadership came from college campuses. Our original plan was to draft Stokely Carmichael of SNCC into the party and make him prime minister, then to add all the SNCC leadership to the party's administrative positions, including H. Rat Brown and James Foreman. By doing this, we hope to create a merger, not a coalition, since it seemed to us that only by merging could we produce the strong leadership we needed. Think about how different the world would be if SNCC and the Black Panthers merged. The SNCC Panthers. The slick SNCC Black Panthers. That's crazy. Anyway, shout out to Carl Johnson up in the chat. And shout out to everybody else. Shout out to Autistic Cool. Shout out to Kamal for holding it down. Holding it down. Holding it down. Anyway, continuing here. So, the movement was cresting around the country. Brothers on the block in many northern cities were moving angrily in response to the problems that overwhelmed them. New York and other eastern cities had exploded in 1964. Watts went up in 1965, Cleveland in 1966, and in 1967, another long, hot summer was approaching. But the brothers needed direction for their energies. The party wanted no more spontaneous riots because the outcome was always the same. The people might liberate their territories for a few short days or hours, but eventually the military force of the oppressor would wipe out their gains. Having neither the strength nor the organization, the people were powerless. In the final analysis, riots caused only more repression and the loss of brave men. Blacks bled and died in the riots and went to jail on petty or false charges. If the brothers could be organized into disciplined cadres working in broadly based community programs, then the energy expended in riots could be directed toward permanent and positive changes. The matter was urgent. Police were being strengthened nationwide and given more power. In order to deal with this, we had to organize our resources and develop an administrative body. On the other hand, although SNCC had skills, we felt they were headed for a decline because the thrust of the movement was diminishing in the South and moving into the cities of the North and West. At this point in time, it seemed clear to us that SNCC and the Black Panthers needed each other and Black people needed us both. By making Stokely Carmichael, Prime Minister, head of the Black Panther Party. We were in effect voting to give leadership to the party to SNCC. We even considered moving our headquarters to Atlanta, where the Black Panthers were gonna give Stokely Carmichael the whole party. They were gonna give Stokely Carmichael the party and then move to Atlanta. Could you imagine the Black Panthers at Freaknik? What the hell, bruh? What? What? No. No, Huey, no, don't do that. Anyway, we even considered moving the Black Panther Party headquarters to Atlanta, where we would be under SNCC in their buildings with access to their duplicating equipment and other sorely needed materials. Our long-range plan was to organize the communities of the North, especially the brothers on the block, using SNCC's administrative talent to coordinate the activities. Combining their work in the South and ours in the North would give the forces of Black liberation a powerful striking force. We drew up our plans, drafting Stokely Carmichael as Prime Minister. H. Rap Brown, rest in peace. Rest in peace, H. Rap Brown. Okay? We drew up our plans, drafting Stokely Carmichael as Prime Minister, H. Rap Brown as Minister of Justice, and James Foreman as Minister of Foreign Affairs. This is my ideal blunt rotation. Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, James Foreman. My God, just throwing Harry Haywood in the mix and that blunt getting passed. That blunt getting passed, for real. Anyway, our own position was clear. We would accept whatever places in the administration they had for us. We were not hung up on status. Eldridge, Bobby, and I were in full agreement about this. A party as such did not interest me. I was more concerned about the revolution and the freedom of Black people and getting the best personnel in positions of authority to bring these goals about. From the beginning, Black Panther leadership had been a casual thing, designed only to give our ideas a form and structure. Eldridge got in touch with Stokely about the merger. They had met early in 1967 when Eldridge traveled with Stokely on an assignment for Ramparts. We had met other SNCC people then too, so Eldridge handled communications. We also got in touch with Rap Brown and James Foreman, who both seemed to go along with the plan. They in turn were supposed to inform the rest of the governing body of SNCC, and we thought this had been done when Brown and Foreman indicated that SNCC approved of the merger, but the scheme never worked out as we hoped. Think about that. Think about that. SNCC and the Black Panthers almost formed. This is why we learned some Black history, man. This is very dope, okay? Kareth J says, very reminiscent of if the Wakandans allied with the Atlanteans, or more realistically, or if the Haitians were in solidarity with the Dominicans. I think it's reverse. The Dominicans need to be in solidarity with the Haitians. You know, the anti-Haitian and anti-Black racism in the Dominican Republic is so famous, you don't even have to go there to know this meme. Me no black poppy. Me no black poppy. Oh my God, I will vote. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, shout out to everybody. Shout out to Mystic Pizza, okay? Who would enforce the laws if the police didn't exist? The community, the community. I'm gonna continue here. So, Huey says in Revolutionary Suicide, chapter 21, we later found out that if it had all been empty talk on their part. Sorry, Huey says he found out it had been empty talk on the part of SNCC. According to others on the governing body of SNCC, the matter was never brought up formally, despite assurances to us by Brown and Foreman, nor was the entire membership notified of any plans for a merger. So when we announced the merger that we were delivering the Black Panthers to them, some of the SNCC people reacted in a paranoid way. They thought we were trying to co-opt them. As a result, some SNCC members, Julius Lester and others, wrote articles criticizing us, saying that we had not approached the right people in attempting to accomplish the merger. We took offense at this. We had gone through the people we knew and those who spoke publicly for SNCC since we thought the organization was behind them, but apparently it was not. I think the main problem was a basic lack of trust. If we supported each other and were honest, I felt sure that a certain level of trust would be reached. This is very crucial in any good relationship. More crucial, perhaps, in this case, since the merger was susceptible to misrepresentation and misunderstanding. But there was no real trust because SNCC's people believed we wanted to take over their organization, whereas the reverse was true. We intended to give them complete control. Woo! Whew, they just did not see it that way. Later, when I was in jail, I was told that they had totally rejected any plans for a merger because I never answered a letter they wrote me. I was in solitary confinement all this time and did not receive the letter from SNCC, but they held me responsible nonetheless. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if COINTELPRO was working back then, trying to make sure SNCC and the Panthers did not form a major union, okay? Yeah, we're almost done with chapter 21. So it worked out for the best in the end, however, because when SNCC took their turn in the wrong direction, we were not dragged along. They had talked socialism for a while, but then they backtracked and started to advocate a separate nation and to ignore the world-class problem. Any relationship with Stokely would have been problematical. We realized this when we first got in touch with African guerrilla groups and other freedom fighters. They said they had confidence in Stokely at first, believing him to be a revolutionary. But when he allied himself with a reactionary African governments, he lost his credibility. He had come into their countries, barely acknowledging them, talking about the new alliance he was forming with Nkrumah and making himself the spokesman for African freedom fighters. Then the revolutionaries found out that Nkrumah did not really support Stokely's position on race. I first met Stokely in May 1967 when he came to speak in the Bay Area. We met once at Eldridge's house and another time at Beverly Axelrod's several times. We drove to San Mateo together to meet with small community groups. Stokely wrote in a recent book that when he visited the Bay Area, Bobby and I had asked his permission to start an organization and call it the Black Panther Party. This is untrue. Bobby and I together had chosen the party's name, taking it from the symbol of the Black Panther used by the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, which Stokely had helped found in Mississippi. We never asked Stokely's advice about starting the party. We were organizing before we met him. Anyway, we broke with SNCC, not really wanting to, but realizing we could accomplish little without their trust. Going to the comments, Rick Sanchez says hello. Shout out to Rick Sanchez. Shout out to J Drizzle Faux Shizzle. J Drizzle Faux Shizzle is a crazy name. Shout out to J Drizzle up in here. We're almost finished reading for today, chapter 21 of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. He's talking about SNCC and the Panthers possibly merging. So Huey says, later, I was glad of the break because Stokely's views are so inconsistent you never know where he is coming from. Here goes Huey being shady again. This boy's shady as hell. When a man is consistent, you at least know what is happening and what to expect. Stokely says one thing one day and another the next. He accuses us of misleading people by our coalitions with whites. But I say he confuses people when he goes to Washington and tries to prevent a black policeman from being kicked off the force. A policeman who takes orders to kill his own people and who protects the establishment. Stokely told me he would support anyone, he did not care who, if the person was black. That's crazy. We consider this viewpoint both racist and suicidal. If you support a black man with a gun who belongs to the military arm of your oppressor, then you are assisting in your own destruction. Our plans for a merger with SNCC probably would not have come in time to prevent the summer riots of 1967. In July and August, when the black communities of Newark and Detroit erupted in rage and frustration, our worst expectations came true. In each instance, trouble had begun when the police had brutalized a brother or sister. In a larger sense, the younger blacks particularly were expressing their frustration. The consequences of these bitter uprisings would surely be more right-wing political action and a move to conservative politics throughout the nation. The eruption in Watts had come in 1965, and Ronald Reagan was elected governor in 66. Now, with the cities rocked by riots again in 67, the ruling circles would undoubtedly respond with more repressive controls. The California story would be repeated in other states and then on a national level. All that summer, we sought to prevent this chain of events. We organized, recruited, and worked hard at putting out our paper. We tried especially to be aware of what was happening on the streets of the inner cities so we could ride the crest of the movement by directing the people's energies in constructive ways. We particularly wanted people to understand their constitutional rights, rights that were constantly violated by police and authorities. With only an elementary knowledge of these rights, many of their problems could be avoided in tense situations. So once again, a vanguard party leading the people in the right direction. We only have about 3 more pages to go. Then we're going to call it a day. Thank you to everybody who's been joining in the conversation. And I'm very interested to see the results of the poll. So, to impart that knowledge, we began a series of pieces in the earliest issues of our newspaper called Pocket Lawyer of Legal First Aid. Using law books and various legal pamphlets, I put together in simple form a number of rules for people to follow. Pocket Lawyer for Legal First Aid, written by Huey P. Newton. This pocket lawyer is provided as a means of keeping Black people up to date on their rights. We are always the first to be arrested, and the racist police forces are constantly trying to pretend that rights are extended equally to all people. Cut this out, brothers and sisters, and carry it with you. Until we arm ourselves to righteously take care of our own, the pocket lawyer is what's happening. We need to bring this back. We need to bring back the pocket lawyer. If you are stopped and or arrested by the police, you may remain silent. You do not have to answer any questions about alleged crimes. You should provide your name and address only if requested, although it is not absolutely clear that you must do so. But then do so, and at all times remember the Fifth Amendment. If a police officer is not in uniform, ask him to show his identification. He has no authority over you unless he properly identifies himself. Be aware of persons posing as police officers. Always get his badge number and his name. Police have no right to search your car or your home unless they have a search warrant, probable cause, or your consent. They may conduct no exploratory search, that is, one for evidence of crime generally or for evidence of a crime unconnected with the one you are being questioned about. Thus, a stop for an auto violation does not give the right to search the auto. You are not required to consent to a search. Therefore, you should not consent and should state clearly and unequivocally that you do not consent in front of witnesses if possible. If you do not consent, the police will have the burden in court of showing probable cause. Arrest may be corrected later. You may not resist forcibly or by going limp, even if you are innocent. To do so is a separate crime of which you can be convicted, even if you are acquitted of the original charge. Do not resist arrest under any circumstances. If you are stopped and or arrested, the police may search you by patting you on the outside of your clothing. If you are stopped and or arrested, the police may search you by patting you on the outside of your clothing. You can be stripped of your personal possessions. Do not carry anything that includes the name of your employer or friends. Do not engage in friendly conversation with officers on the way to or at the station. Once you are arrested, there is little likelihood that anything you say will get you released. As soon as you have been booked, you have the right to complete at least 2 phone calls, one to a relative, friend, or attorney, the other to a bail bondsman. If you can, call the Black Panther Party at 845-0103, 845-0104, and the party will post bail if possible. You must be allowed to hire and see an attorney immediately. You do not have to give any statement to the police, nor do you have to sign any statement you might give them, and therefore you should not sign anything. Take the 5th and 14th Amendments, because you cannot be forced to testify against yourself. You must be allowed to post bail in most cases, but you must be able to pay the bail bondsman's fee. If you cannot pay the fee, you may ask the judge to release you from the custody without bail or to lower your bail, but he does not have to do so. The police must bring you into court or release you within 48 hours after your arrest, unless the time ends on a weekend or a holiday, and they must bring you before a judge the first day court is in session. If you do not have the money to hire an attorney, immediately ask the police to give you an attorney without charge. Ask the police to give you an attorney without charge. If you have the money to hire a private attorney but do not know of one, call the National Lawyers Guild or the Alameda County Bar Association or the Bar Association of your county and ask them to furnish you with the name of an attorney who practices criminal law. So everything there that the Black Panthers were telling people is so vital and so real, and we need to bring back the pocket lawyer. We need to do that. Anyway. Carrying our message as it did right into the homes of the people. The paper was a source of great satisfaction and pleasure to us. It explained events from a community point of view. For instance, in the Black Panther, the people read the true explanation of why we went to Sacramento and what happened there. We reported on events and meetings in Black communities all over the Bay Area. Until that time, the Black Panther Party had been maligned by the establishment press, which was interested only in the kind of sensationalism that sells papers. But once we began to give our own interpretation of events, Black people realized how facts had been twisted by the mass media. They were glad to get our point of view, and the paper sold well. It became a steady source of funds to help us continue developing our programs. I was satisfied with our movement in 1967. Our newspaper was reaching the people. The Sacramento stance had received tremendous support. New chapters were springing up in many cities. We were expecting new ways to raise the consciousness of Black people. Everything was working well. My only sadness was that Bobby Seale was going away to jail for 6 months in August as a result of the Sacramento confrontation. We had made a deal with the courts in Sacramento. Bobby would do 6 months for a misdemeanor in exchange for the charges being dropped against the others. 6 months was not long in the life of our struggle, but Bobby was a good organizer, a man who got things moving. He would be missed. Still, we expressed no sorrow when Bobby was taken away from us. This was a small price to pay for the liberation of the people. Also, it was only a question of time before they would be after me. And then Eldridge. When Bobby left in August 1967, we were not to be together on the streets again until June 1971. Wow. And that's the end of chapter 21 and the end of part 3 of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. We will begin reading part 4 tomorrow, hopefully. And part 4 only has 4 chapters. So we'll try to complete all of part 4 tomorrow as we complete this book. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We had a lot of comments, a lot of engagement. This might be my biggest live stream of all time, and that makes me incredibly happy. Incredibly happy because, you know, we're celebrating the legacy of one of my heroes, and hopefully one of your heroes as well, Huey P. Newton, a man who put his life on the line for what he believed in. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just Black people he was fighting for. He was fighting for all people through the vehicle of fighting for Black liberation. I'm very kind of a bit nervous and worried to see the results of the poll because we had so many white nationalists, white supremacists, right-wingers, reactionaries, and fascists up in here. But I will end the poll to see the results so we can find out what people think about the Black Panther Party. Okay, I don't see the results of the poll. Okay, all right, and of course, once again, it's split. It's sort of split down the middle. We have mostly positive, 37%, mostly negative, 37%, other, 13%, and I'm familiar with the BPP, 13%. So I always take split polls as people being unserious and trolling, which is better than, you know, it being just flooded with white supremacists and white nationalists who just say mostly negative and just, you know, bomb my chat. So I'll take that for what it is. I also have the poll up on the other live stream right here, okay? And with 1 vote, it had mostly positive. So I'm gonna take it that the Black Panthers had a mostly positive view by the people, okay? So, because we won by 1 vote. We won by 1 vote. Anyway. Thank you for joining this live stream. See you tomorrow. Shout out to everybody that joined. There's too many people to shout out, but shout out to Kamal and Kareth J and everybody else who joined this this live stream. Y'all be easy out there, and peace.